Welcome in to the late night Gamecock show. Today is Tuesday, April 8th, 2025. Man, Alex, I say it all the time. Time is really flying. And last night was the culmination of the NCAA basketball tournament. Before we get into Gamecock stuff, just the overall tournament, we had a big show talking about, what we thought would happen. We predicted the national champion. It was Florida. I don't think that Florida did it in the fashion that we thought they would, overcoming multiple, 2 double-digit leads and a 9-point deficit between the Elite Eight, Final Four, and National Championship. But Alex, overall thoughts before we get on to Gamecock stuff?
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's already over. It feels like we were just watching those first weekend games. But, I thought it was one of the better Final Fours that we've seen in quite a while. And not that really any Final Four is bad, but I think it was just – having pretty much all one seed or the one seeds in it, I think that's really, you saw high level basketball. And, I think we both saw Florida winning it and getting to the championship. But, I kind of, as we got closer to the game, I kind of thought Houston's just the way they play defense and the effort they put in, kind of thought maybe they would do just enough. And then for a while, it looked like they were going to do just enough to get there. But then Florida kind of battled its way back a little bit and got into the game. And it was, they made the plays there late. And, we talk about Houston's defense, but then it was the defense on that last play. That Walt Clayton getting out there and contesting that three to kind of get in the face and force that really kind of a loose ball. And it's kind of a crazy ending, and you kind of hate that ending for Houston just because you get the shot up, you never know what's going to happen. But it was a great tournament, great Final Four, and Florida was a really good team, and you saw that all year. You saw that, just throughout SEC play, how good they were with those guards and those forwards in the paint. But, it was just, I thought it was a great Final Four, great tournament.
I did too. I know a lot of people don't like chalk. A lot of people want to see the upsets, and we had a handful of them. Most notably McNeese State over Clemson, which was fun for a lot of Gamecock fans. And there were more upsets, but not really a lot. And I think that has more to do with a lot of these programs having 6th year and sometimes 7th year players in the program, and the bigger schools were just eating up those kids in the transfer portal window last year, and the rich got richer. So I wasn't surprised to see the tournament unfold the way that it did. I'm sick to my stomach for those Duke kids. I'm sick to my stomach for those Houston kids, and I'm sick to my stomach for the Texas Tech kids. It just shows you that basketball is a game of runs, and you want to have the best run and you want to have the last run in the game. And for Duke to lose the way that they did, with Houston coming back and taking that game with, what was it, Alex? 30 seconds left, Duke's up by 6 and they lose by 3. It's unheard of. But then I just feel sick to my stomach for those kids for Houston who had a 12-point lead in the second half. And the last 5 to 6 minutes of that game, you just felt Florida coming. And when they crossed that threshold and got up and got a lead, and then it was back and forth. It was something fun to watch. I'm not a big Ty Golden guy. I know that he worked his way up, but I'm not a big Ty Golden guy. Kelvin Sampson has his skeletons in his closet too. He had a 5-year show clause, went to the NBA and coached for a while, but I think Kelvin Sampson's a really good basketball coach, and a name that South Carolina was linked to for probably 2 or 3 different coaching searches. But that's enough about that. We're going to talk a little bit of South Carolina men's basketball. We got to talk about the women's Final Four and the national championship yesterday. We'll talk softball, baseball, and football recruiting on tonight's show. So, Alex, go ahead and roll those credits, and we'll get right into the show.
Welcome to the Late Night Gamecock Show from Chief Sports South Carolina. Here are your hosts, Matt Anderson and Alex Jones of thebigspur.com.
Well, Alex, before we get into the women's Final Four, the women's tournament, and the national championship game, I'm seeing right here to my left that South Carolina is up 6-2 in the top of the 5th inning, but South Carolina Upstate has the bases loaded with 2 outs and a 1-2 count and foul ball. So now it's a 1-2 count. Woo! They brought in a pitcher here, but Dalton Mayshore hit a grand slam, and then Ethan Petrie hit a 2-run homer. So we'll keep one eye over there. If I see people running around, hopefully it's Gamecocks running back to the dugout. But Alex, the women's program made it to their 5th consecutive Final Four, went back to the national championship game, and in my estimation, just ran into a buzzsaw, a team that thoroughly embarrassed them in Colonial Life Arena. And it was better for the national championship, but it still, in my opinion, wasn't a contest.
Yeah, it just kind of felt like UConn matched up really well with South Carolina, and I think kind of maybe had the blueprint of what they could do to beat South Carolina. It showed that first game and then the national championship game. But you're watching that game. South Carolina was in the game at halftime. You just felt like South Carolina had needed to get some things going offensively, and I thought UConn's perimeter defense was really good on South Carolina. I think the Gamecocks shot 4 of 16 from 3, and that's. I think that was one of the keys going into the game, that South Carolina had to get some momentum going from behind the arc, and then you add that in with an AZ Fudd was just awesome in that game, and Sarah Strong both going for 24, and Sarah Strong going for 15 rebounds and 5 assists as well. She's really good, and I mean I think Paige Breckers had 17 points, but she really kind of just affected the game, and on both sides of the court, finishing with 6 rebounds and 3 assists as well. So I think it just came down to UConn was playing really good basketball, and that's really what the NCAA tournament is about, both men's and women's. Who's playing the best basketball right now? And I think South Carolina was playing pretty good basketball, but UConn was just a really, really good team this year, and they found a way to get it done.
I'm right there with you. You look at, and by the way, the Gamecocks did get out of that bases loaded 2-out jam. USC Upstate chased a pitch outside for strike 3, but the women finished 35-4 overall. They won a share of the SEC regular season. They won the SEC women's basketball tournament. They beat Texas 3 out of 4 times this season, who tied them for the regular season. It's hard because for Gamecock fans, they are the Dukes, the Kansases, the Kentuckys, the North Carolinas of women's basketball. I'm talking from a fan standpoint. They expect to win the national championship every year, and anything less than that, a Final Four is not good enough. Go talk to Duke fans right now. They're not happy, and South Carolina fans are disappointed, but the trajectory is still great. And looking at it right now, Paige Becker's I don't think she's Caitlin Clark, but she's pretty close. And if I have to be happy for a UConn player, I'm happy for her to go through what she did with her torn ACL. I think she tore the ACL twice, came back, and she won a national championship for UConn. I still don't think that the tide has turned UConn's way definitively right now. South Carolina is still the brand in women's college basketball. And looking at the early rankings, I looked at these way too early rankings yesterday on ESPN.com. They might have changed with something that Alex and I will talk about here in a moment. But the top 10 was 1 UCLA, 2 South Carolina, 3 UConn, 4 Tennessee, 5 Duke, 6 LSU, 7 Oklahoma, 8 Tennessee, 9 Baylor, and 10 NC State. So next year, South Carolina is going to have probably 4, 5, 6 teams in the conference ranked in the top 10. But it's hard to move on after a national championship loss. We're only 48 hours removed from it, give or take a couple hours, maybe we'll say 53 hours removed. But there are some players that are going to be moving on from the women's program. Pal Pal, who everyone loves Pal Pal. I don't think she had the senior season or her last season that she would want to have. We're losing Bree Hall. Bree Hall was a staple for this Gamecocks women's team for years. And then you're losing Walker. Walker is actually in the transfer portal. I think she's using the Pavia transfer rule for JUCO. But you look at the returners, and I think today was an important day, Alex, for South Carolina women's basketball. I know that there were some rumors that Tessa Johnson might enter the portal. As far as that I've seen, she has not. Raven Johnson decided to come back for another year at South Carolina, it seems. There was a 5 p.m. deadline. You and I were asking everybody and searching the internet. We couldn't find anything on Raven Johnson declaring. And then you have Maddie McDaniel, who decided to stick around for another year. Her parents tweeted that today, that she was going to stick it out at South Carolina. I know that she was dealing with a little bit of homesickness, but that's a McDonald's All-American. So you look at next year before we even talk about the incoming players, Alex, but Joyce Edwards, Malaysia Fulwiley, Chloe Kitts, Tessa Johnson, Ashlyn Watkins, Raven Johnson, Maddie McDaniel, Adele Tock, and Miriam Dalda. That's 9. How many of those are all McDonald's All-Americans?
Yeah, I mean, you see no reason why they can't get right back to where they were this year. I mean, you mentioned that core that's coming back. It's a really solid core. Now, you do have to, obviously, as you mentioned, replace Breezy Hall, who was really, really good, and Tahina Pau, who was also extremely talented. And so that you have to replace those guys, but those players. But I think you feel pretty good about where they are on the roster, and not to jump ahead, but then the transfer edition they got today. And we'll get to that in just a second here, but I think that was a huge, huge addition to the team, and it's going to be one that, I mean, it was just a big, big addition for the team.
Yeah, and you look, and they have a 5-star wing coming in, Agat Maker, 4th overall player in women's college basketball. Looks like Gamecocks might have gone yard. Nope, they did not. Looks like a sacrifice. But, yeah, so you got Agat coming in, 4th overall. She's evidently a stud. From everyone that I've talked to, her highlights, she looks very fluid, looks like a really good basketball player. And then Ayla McDowell, who is kind of a wing, but I think she could actually drop down and play power forward as well. But she has a pretty good shot from what I've seen as well. And then, those are 2 McDonald's All-Americans, 2 more. And then you bring Tania Latson in from Florida State. And Alex, she has 1 year left, but a 5'8" guard that averaged 25.2 points per game, 4.6 rebounds, and 4.6 assists at Florida State last year. She scored over 2,000 points in her career at Florida State in 3 seasons. 32.6% three-point shooter, 84.2% free throw shooter. So 32.6 from 3 and 84.2 from the free throw line. Played high school basketball with Raven Johnson. And I looked this up right before the show because I was looking at the total number of points she scored, and she is actually number 20 all time in ACC women's college basketball points. So with averaging 25 a game, who knows what she could have done next year in Tallahassee, but what a big get.
Yeah, right now I think she's ranked number 1 in the 24/7 Sports transfer portal rankings, and rightfully so, just with all those numbers that you mentioned. I mean, 25.2 points per game this year at Florida State. And, obviously, scoring over 20 points per game every year in her college is big, but she's going to bring that experience level where she's played at a high level and played at Florida State. I mean, think about this LSU game that where Florida State lost to LSU in Spokane, scored 30 points and had 7 rebounds. And so I think obviously, she's going to bring a lot to Dawn Staley's team, and she's going to be pretty fun to watch, especially get a Raven Johnson in there as well. Who I think Raven's just kind of the glue of that team, and she keeps things going, especially with the way she can play defensively as well. So that was a really, really exciting get for South Carolina today.
And you talked about that instant chemistry with Raven, and this women's basketball team is really, really tight. They're all good friends, and they all share the basketball. They all share with their experiences with one another. So I don't really have much worry there. The only worry I really have for the women's team next year is, do they have a big that they can play inside out with? I think that Dawn Staley's teams are best when she can play off of a big. And when I say she, I mean she can coach off of a big that can consistently go get 16 to 20 points a game. And then it frees up so many other driving lanes, shooting, all the kinds of things that make Dawn Staley's offense really hum. Right now, it looks like everyone's going to stick around. We talked about Maddie earlier. We talked about Tessa earlier. It looks like both of those girls are going to stick around for another year. I haven't heard any other transfer stuff from the existing roster. And Dawn has at least 3 more scholarships to play with. And Dawn made no bones about it. She immediately in her press conference or talking to media after the loss in the national championship game to UConn said that we're excited for the transfer portal. We're excited to get more players in here. So they've already landed the number 1 player in the transfer portal. South Carolina brand is still as big as it's ever been, and already being ranked number 2 in the preseason, the way too early rankings, and just adding the number 1 girl in the transfer portal. South Carolina is still going to be elite. I think they're going to add some more pieces, Alex.
Yeah, it just kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. They had no reason to not be right back to where they were this year, and I think find a way to push them back into winning the national championship. But I mean, Dawn Staley, we continue to talk about what she's done with the program, and I mean the roster is still in a really good shape. And then you add what you added today, and I think they'll be ready to roll again next year.
Yeah, and I see Steven in the chat. I think he's being sarcastic, the way that a lot of fans are talking online and in message boards. But Steven says UConn is back on top and will be like that for a while. No more titles for Lady Gamecocks ever again. Well, Steven, if you're not being sarcastic, I will remind you that Gino went either 8 or 10 years between his last national championship and his most recent one a couple of days ago. But moving on to softball, Alex. Softball is now 30-8 on the season, 6-6 in the SEC. It's crazy. They've only dropped 1 SEC series, but they got swept in that one. That was at Oklahoma, and no shame in that. But 6-6. This past weekend took 2 out of 3 against Ole Miss. All 3 of those games were close, actually. Mm-hmm. But I think that the story for this team so far is pitching and defense. Looking at the ERA, team ERA is 2.8. The team pitching whip is 1.27. So I know that a lot of baseball nomenclature gets thrown around, but for those of you that don't know, all whip means is walks and hits given up per inning pitched. So a whip of 1.27, you're really only allowing a shade over 1 base runner an inning. And when you're fielding at a 98.3 percentage, really the only way to beat South Carolina is to go yard and get maybe some goose eggs or some crooked numbers. It's either goose eggs or crooked numbers right now for the girls. But the girls do host Charleston Southern tomorrow, 6 p.m. That'll be a big game, and they head to Arkansas. It might be a little bit of a relief. I don't think Arkansas is ranked right now in the softball top 25, but it's still a road challenge. Alex, your overall thoughts on softball before we unfortunately have to move over to baseball?
Yeah, right at the top of this, you mentioned pitching and defense, and that was, like you mentioned again, it was a story this weekend for South Carolina, only giving up 4 runs combined, and in that Friday game, South Carolina did just enough in the 8 innings, winning 1-0, and the offense was a little maybe quiet in those first 2 games, but then did what it had to do in that Sunday game, and I encourage everyone to go look at the Brooke Blankenship plays that she made at shortstop this weekend. Those were pretty incredible. It could have been, I'm not sure if they made it to SportsCenter top 10, but they absolutely were worthy of it. And I mean, so it's just they continue to roll along. And now I think I saw this. Sam Gress was named one of the stars of the week by an outlet out there. So it's just pitching and defense is doing it, and then offense that I think they're continuing to get better and better each week. And softball just continues to roll along in another top 10 matchup this week. It depends on what polls you look at. South Carolina's at 10 and some, I think at 7-1, and Arkansas is at 6 or somewhere in there.
Oh, wow. I didn't see Arkansas ranked, but I was just looking at the Gamecocks online site. Normally they have the rankings up, but I guess rankings don't come out until today. I looked yesterday. Yeah. Softball rankings come out today.
On Gamecocks Online right now, it's 10 versus 12 right now. So it kind of varies, just like with baseball, too. There's so many different outlets that do rankings. But otherwise, another top 15 showdown, top 10 showdown in the SEC. And South Carolina's proven that they've been ready for it every weekend so far. So it'll be interesting to see what they do this weekend. And got Charleston Southern tomorrow, another game. You get another game to kind of get yourself ready for the weekend, and we'll see what they can do.
Yeah, I think they have the number 1 RPI in the country, and probably in line to host at least the first round, maybe even the second round right now, despite that 6-6 record in the SEC. And like SEC, the RPI is huge in baseball, but just like the SEC proved in basketball, in football, in baseball, in softball, in pretty much any sport you can think of. I mean, this has been a banner year for the SEC, and I think they should have gotten more teams into the college football playoff as well. But I would not be surprised to see 5-6 teams in Omaha for on the men's side, and I wouldn't be surprised to see 5-6 teams and wherever they play the softball championship. I think it's somewhere in Oklahoma. I don't know.
City.
Yeah, Oklahoma City. So we'll see there. But we're going to talk a little bit of baseball, then we're going to hit a break, Alex. But baseball, the boys won the first game of the series at Mississippi State, 7-3. A lot of good momentum. It was a good Friday night. Everybody won. Softball won. Tennis won. Women's basketball won. Baseball won. Then dropped Saturday 11-4, and then Sunday was the stinker of the weekend. A 6-0 loss. Only were able to get 2 hits in the game. First hit of the game and the last hit of the game. And Blake Jackson tried to stretch that into a double, got tagged off the base, so goes down as a hit. But Alex, there's not a whole lot to say here, but what I'm going to say quickly is let's just lay it all out there. I'm just going to lay it out there, and then you tell me what your thoughts are on this, Alex. But so the Gamecocks are now 19-14 overall. Obviously have a chance tonight to get to 20-14 overall. Only 2 wins in the SEC. They're 2-10. The wins came against Mississippi State, and then they took one from Texas A&M, I believe. Yeah, that's right. Oklahoma.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So something's going to have to change soon for this bunch in SEC play. Winning less than 20% of your games in conference is not a way to make the NCAA tournament. Arkansas and Texas pace the league right now at 11-1. LSU's at 10-2. Tennessee 9-3. You got Georgia and Ole Miss at 8-4. Bama and Vandy at 7-5. Auburn at 6-6. Kentucky and Oklahoma at 5-7. Mississippi State and Texas A&M at 3-9. South Carolina 2-10. Florida's 1-11, and Missouri still winless. So I say all that, and it seems like doom and gloom, Alex. It doesn't seem good, but I can also tell you right now that the Gamecocks are only 4 games behind 9th place in the SEC. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, I don't know. Just because of, I think this weekend you look at, or this coming up weekend, you had Texas A&M, and you kind of thought like, okay, South Carolina can find a way to get some things done in Mississippi or in Starkville, find a way to win that series. You can get the ball rolling a little bit just because Texas A&M wasn't playing great heading into this past weekend, and then they go and take 2 from Tennessee in one day, and now maybe they're starting to get some things together, and now you got to go there for a Thursday through Saturday series. So I don't know. It's still a long ways to go. I think they've got a lot of things they still have to figure out, and it's the middle point of the season right now. And I think in the Mississippi State series, when you going into it, you thought this was their opportunity to start something, just because Mississippi State was also struggling. They came into the series with 1 conference win as well, and you go into that Friday game and you play pretty well. You win 7-3. You get some insurance runs there late in that game and push away. The Saturday game, you ended up losing 11-4, but it kind of just felt like it was one of those days for Mississippi State where I think they hit 5 home runs in that game, and you kind of just felt like maybe it was just Mississippi State's day. They were desperate to get a win in that series and see what you can do on Sunday, and then the bats really just did not show up on Sunday. And I think that's they've got to get some of that figured out, and you hope maybe in this USC Upstate game, scoring these 6 runs quickly, maybe they can take some momentum from that into Texas A&M this weekend. But I think they got to find a way to get some momentum going offensive, because the Sunday game, obviously, that just was not good from an offensive standpoint.
Yeah, and that Sunday game, I think it's one that I say it 3 or 4 times a year in every sport, especially basketball and baseball. And I probably say it once or twice a year, at least this past year in football, but you just got to wash it. You just got to say, okay, that's not us. And if it is us, we have bigger problems. But I think that's a nut up or shut up type performance, and either you quit or you keep fighting. As Alex mentioned, it's a Thursday through Saturday at Texas A&M this weekend. The following weekend, it's Kentucky on the road. It's not exactly early in the season anymore, Alex.
No.
But we're not. This will be this weekend the halfway point of the SEC regular season, and just looking at it, so you got Texas A&M, and then you have Ole Miss at home, and then you have Kentucky on the road. I feel like these next 9 games are going to define the season.
Yeah,
in the SEC play.
I think I said it last weekend too, but I mean, it all starts this weekend for South Carolina. It's kind of they got some room they got a lot of room to gain to get back into the real NCAA tournament picture. And I mean, you got a chance this weekend, but you kind of had 2 Sunday games now that you had to win. And the Oklahoma game, I think you can make a case South Carolina should have won if they just made the plays there in the 9th inning. And then the Mississippi State game, if you find, so let's say you take that Oklahoma game, you end up winning that series. Then you take the Mississippi State series as well. You're feeling okay right now with some potential for momentum, but you ended up losing both of those games, and you're really behind the 8 ball right now.
Yeah, with these 9 games, I think that they have to get 6 out of these 9. I think they have to get 6 out of these 9. I'm not saying you have to win all 3 series, but find a way to sweep one and then win another, and then you can drop one. That's okay, because after Kentucky, you get struggling Florida at home. Knowing Gamecocks' luck, Florida's going to be figuring it out, and they'll be, let's say, 10-11. They're going to sweep their next 3 weekends and come into South Carolina red hot. After Florida, you go to Auburn, place you can take maybe 2 out of 3.
And Florida, obviously they're struggling right now, but Kevin O'Sullivan seems to always get that program going to where they are, battling. They'll get themselves back up to where they're, you'll see them in Omaha more than likely at the end of the season. Like, they just always find a way to, they'll get off to a little bit of a slow start, but then they always seem to get going as well. So I think it'd be hard to count out Florida right now as being a series where it's going to be a tough series no matter what. But Florida, you feel like they'll find a way to get things going too.
Yeah. So, I mean, okay, let's say you go 6-9, and then you got Florida. Say if you take that series, yeah. So now you're 10-14. Then you go to Auburn. Say you take 2 out of 3. That's 12-15. 12-15 in the SEC is solidly a 2-3 seed in the NCAA tournament. Then you close it out at home against LSU. LSU, probably number 2-3 team in the country right now. It's at home, and it's Paul Maneri. I'm not going to say it's a revenge game. It's not like he got fired necessarily. I think he left on good terms in LSU. At least he talks like he did. I don't think he has any ill will. But the bottom line for baseball is just, they got to start freaking winning. So, Alex, I just laid out the scenario to maybe get to 13-16, or 13-17, 14-16. What odds would you put that on? Like a percentage 1 to 100? What percentage do you think that they will have? Let me make it easier. What percentage 1 to 100 do you think they'll win double-digit games in the SEC this year?
Oh man,
they only need 8 more.
It's just the schedule is so scary. I mean, it is going to be in the SEC every year, but you kind of feel like you've had the series where you could gain maybe 2 to 3 games, and you struggled in those series. You end up not. The Oklahoma one, you felt like you maybe 2, maybe 3 in that series. You only got 1. I mean, it's not going to be easy. I don't know how to put a percentage on it, just because I think things can change so quickly with baseball. South Carolina get some things going offensively that can help the pitching staff, but it's hard to see right now, and maybe they do, but I think it's just hard to see.
I think it's hard to see too. I mean, I would probably say, and I hate doing it this early in the season, say a 40% chance they make the NCAA tournament. I'd say 20% chance they get to 12 wins in conference. But baseball is a funky game, man. You can get hot and you can get on a run. So, well, Alex, when we come back from break, let's talk a little bit of men's basketball. Then we're going to get to Gamecock football. I'll go ahead and tell y'all before the break, we don't got a lot on men's basketball. It's a dead window right now. But Alex, hit that sponsor, and then we'll talk men's basketball.
Mike here for one of the better dining options in the capital city. You know, when I first moved there, I asked people around the radio station, where are the best wings? Well, the consensus was D's Wings. That was then. Today, they still have the best wings, but it's so much more now in their new location at 415 Meeting Street in West Columbia. Yeah, they get voted the best wings on a routine basis. Yes, they get voted the best sports bar on a routine basis, but they're not just about wings, and really, they're not just a sports bar. It is a family-run local restaurant and bar with 20 TVs and 25 beers on tap. And how about these daily specials? Every Monday night at D's, you've got 75-cent wings from 4 until closing. Tacos on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, 18 wings and a pitcher of beer for $29. You've also got ribs and oyster bucket specials on Thursday. And no matter how big the party is, 20 or more, no problem. Just call ahead of time and they'll take terrific care of you. They'll do takeout as well. And guess what? A human will answer the phone and take the order. Billy and his staff do an outstanding job. Check out D's 415 Meeting Street in West Columbia.
Well, welcome back in. We'll talk a little bit about some basketball here. I saw a question in the chat box. What's the latest on CMB staying or going? It's a really fluid situation right now. And I really wouldn't take into account where you're seeing him go in mock drafts or where he's ranked, because right now this whole thing is a question for Colin. Does he think he's ready? It's not a situation where, money is the most important thing, but at the same time, if he is going to be a top 10 pick and he feels like he's ready and he can get that second contract a little bit sooner, you're talking about exponentially making more money than he'd be making if he came back to South Carolina for a year and delayed that and was still a top 10 pick. So we'll see. We'll see about Colin. I really don't know. I don't want to say it's 50-50 because I think it could be 60-40 either way. I don't know. He's going to go through the pre-draft process is my understanding. Probably going to go to the combine, going to hear what they say. And we'll know a lot more after the combine because there are going to be people that shoot up because of numbers and individual workouts and 3-man workouts and all kinds of things. But Colin has a little bit of time. I think he has sometime in May where he'd have to, if he declares, he has sometime in like May or very, very early June to withdraw his name. So this could drag out a little bit, but it's a dead period right now, Alex, in college basketball. I don't know if Lamont went to the Final Four. I haven't got confirmation on that yet, or any assistant coaches went there, but the Final Four is usually a coaches convention. It's where all the coaches go and they hang out. They kind of decompress from the season. They kind of shoot the breeze with one another, and then they take some time and they come back. So I don't know if Lamont was there, but that's the reason that there was a dead period. And Alex, you and I kind of texted back and forth about it yesterday. You have this dead period, and then you have the transfer portal window open, and you still have teams playing in the dead period. It's just a cluster, and you and I talked about, we can see it both ways.
Yeah, I think as you and I were talking, I think I heard maybe Bruce Pearl talk about it a little bit. Just, you can see both sides of it to where, as you mentioned, like, why is can the portal wait to open until after the Final Four? So where there's maybe even Sweet 16 to Final Four teams aren't having to recruit and get ready for the biggest games of their season. But you can also see the other side of it to where a team like, say, South Carolina, if somebody wanted to enter the transfer portal and they didn't make the NCAA tournament, is it fair to make those players wait all the way through for basically at this point a month to enter the portal and then find out where they're going? So, I think it's okay right now because I think, the coaches, with the way staffs are built right now, like they have people who can, look into the portal and who aren't having to really worry about game planning, and they can do kind of the big legwork to figure out what's the roster need, what's it going to look like, who are guys we can go after. So I think it's, maybe they change it in the future, but I think for right now it's okay. But it's got to be a crazy process for those, coaching staffs that are in the second weekend and beyond when the portal opens.
Yeah, and it's really quiet right now, Alex, and it's quiet for a reason. I found out Zach Davis. I see Matt asking, does Tessa leave and follow Zach Davis? I don't know. I mean, Tessa, there's rumors that she might transfer, but she hasn't said that yet. But Zach Davis looks to be going on a visit to Memphis once this dead period ends. So we'll see if that visit, actually unfolds. But there's a couple names, Alex, and who are the names? There's the kid from Robert Morris. What's his name, Alex? I'm blanking.
It's Alvaro, and I can't remember his last name because if I pronounce, I probably pronounce it.
It's Alvaro, like Longara or something like that. But he was like a
really
14-9 guy at Robert Morris. He has a lot of suitors. I know that South Carolina has been working him. And then you have the kid from, was it Boston College, Alex?
Yeah, a Strong.
What's his name?
Elijah Strong.
Yeah, I always want to say Elijah Hood for some reason. But yeah, Elijah Strong. I think that, we'll see what happens. I think the Robert Morris kid could be a starter. I think the Elijah kid could probably be like a bench piece.
Yeah.
Gamecocks did lose Morris, Ugasuk, and Oku Federico last week, late last week, actually. Or no, was it yesterday? I can't remember. Days were all running together. It was late last week.
Yeah.
But and basically they just felt like they got recruited over. They wanted to go have a fresh start. So South Carolina has 4 spots open now, and they're being intentionally quiet because if they can sneak a kid in after the dead period, get them to visit without other visits being scheduled, get a commitment, that's what they're going to try and do. I know that they want to get at least one primary ball handler. And with Oku and Morris going to the transfer portal, it opened up a myriad of opportunity for them. And look, you can look at it and say, wow, look at all these teams filling up on these elite guys. But there are still many, many teams that, I mean, if you look at like Kansas still has to find like 6 guys.
Mm-hmm.
You look at who else? North Carolina probably has to find 5 guys. And Clemson has to find some guys. And like, this is far from over. This transfer portal window was not going to be a 3-day blitz, I guess is the way I want to say it.
And to your point, I think that's why it is so quiet right now, because there are so many teams that still have a lot of spots to fill in. Teams, and it's not just South Carolina, it's everywhere. Teams are willing to be really quiet just because they don't want to really kind of tip their hand to who they're going after. And, there's still a lot of players in the portal as well. It's not, I'm not sure on the exact number, but there's still a lot of players to go around. And so, I think you have to imagine here later this week, you start to, pick up a little bit on see what they're doing, who are some potential guys that either in for visiting or they want to get in for a visit. And, we'll see kind of these next maybe 2 weeks or so where things are with the roster. But, I'm sure they've kind of had their guys they've planned through this dead period to who the guys they really want to go after and see if they can get the visit, because, the visit's kind of key. You can see that both ways too. Like maybe the visit isn't as key as it used to be. Maybe it is. You kind of point to the Trace and Eagle staff visit. That was a very key visit to get him to commit to South Carolina. But, I think, later towards the week, maybe you start to hear a little bit more news as to where things are heading.
Yeah, I think so. And remember that all of these kids, I don't care if it's a kid from Charleston Southern that's in the portal. There is an agent that these coaches have to go through. And it's a dead period talking to kids, but the kids can call the coaches. They just can't go on campus, and the coaches can't call them, but they can talk to parents. They can talk to intermediaries. They can talk to agents. They can talk to high school coaches. So there is a lot going on right now that nobody in the country is privy to. And look, I know a lot of people throughout the country, and I looked at a lot of message boards too. And every fan base is just like the Gamecock fan base right now, just dying for information. And unfortunately, there's just nothing to report outside of those 2 guys that we just mentioned. But I think that'll change soon. Alex, before we get out of here tonight, Alex, did Shane Beamer yell at you today? I saw that in the chat box. Evidently, Shane yelled at someone in the press conference.
Yeah, it's you can go watch the beginning of the press conference and see what he had to say. And wasn't at me, but it was just go back and watch it.
Yeah, I think all the coaches right now are going to be very sensitive for information that comes out of their program when there's a second transfer portal window. I honestly don't think Shane would have said what he said today if there wasn't another transfer portal window coming up, because a lot of teams are looking for a second, third team left guard or left tackle or whatever. So I think Shane was just trying to defend his program, but I thought Shane was also pretty good saying that, look, you guys have a job too. And, there is a job that Alex does, and it's an important job. And I understand both sides of it, but no, it was not Alex getting yelled at today. If you go through the tea leaves, you can probably figure out who it was. We're not going to say it on the air tonight. But anyway, Alex, the scrimmage, I'm not going to say it any better than John did today on the Inside the Gamecock show, the morning show. Just go listen to the last 20, 30 minutes. John Strickland, I'm talking about, by the way, not John Whittle, but John Strickland did a great job kind of explaining what happened. The brief synopsis in 45 seconds is the defense he thinks still looks really good. The first team starters didn't play a whole lot, maybe 2-3 series. 2 or 3 drives, about 75 snaps. Defense probably a little bit ahead of the offense. And I guess the other thing, DQ Smith had an interception near the goal line on a tip ball.
Yeah.
So that's really all I can say on it.
Yeah, I don't think it's too surprising to hear, the reports of the defense, having a little bit better day in the offense. That's typical, and that's something that's going to happen. It's going to happen every year. And I kind of thought, talking to Shane today, him saying that he was pleased with the special teams performance. I thought that was kind of key because that's a key question in the offseason that maybe doesn't get talked about enough. They got to replace Kai Kroger at punter and holder. They got to replace Alex Herrera. They got to replace Hunter Rogers at long snapper. Those are key positions in a game, and they got to replace each one of those. And it sounds like he liked what he saw and from the special teams unit as a whole. He mentioned DQ Smith as well, blocked a field goal. So, I thought that was interesting to hear him say that he did like what they were able to do special teams wise. But yeah, we'll see. They got another scrimmage going back over to the stadium this weekend on Saturday before the Garden and Black spring game. So we'll see what else kind of pops up there.
Yeah, and I'm excited for it. And look, I thought it was a cool thing Shane did, letting the media come through for a couple extra portions, and we'll see if it happens in the future. There's probably just some parent that saw it in some form of media that got mad seeing that their son might be somewhere else, and it was probably just internal problems Shane had to deal with. But that's just purely hypothetical, me talking out loud. Who knows what the exact reason for it was? But Alex, this is now not just spring practice, it's also recruiting season. So spring games coming up, visits are coming up. I'm not going to ask you the exact date for every kid visiting, but if we could, Gamecocks are about to score 3 runs here, by the way. If we could, Alex, can we just go through position by position? Maybe let's start at quarterback, go through offense, go through defense, and just give some names for the folks to know.
Yeah, so at quarterback, I think we've kind of touched on quarterback. Obviously, with it being such a pivotal position, we've touched on the names there. Jared Curtis was something they were involved with, but now that one's down to Georgia and Oklahoma. Now, I think Landon Duckworth and Brady Smeagol are the 2 names to watch, and we'll see kind of how those 2 evolve. Like with Duckworth, and you got to watch Georgia, or you got to watch Ole Miss with him. Like it's there. You don't see it often that guys who were once committed to a program go back to a program. Not saying it can't happen because there's obviously mutual interest between South Carolina and Duckworth, and he kind of mentioned him when I talked to him in Carrollton, Georgia, about a month or so ago. He was still interested in South Carolina, so keep an eye on that one, and we'll see what the visits kind of look like. And then with Smeagol, I think that's another one just kind of continue to watch and see. And if they don't get those 2 guys, there's always you still have the transfer portal to lean on, but you also we talk about a lot Cutter Woods and how late that process happened. We saw him in the summer, and they had him into that camp, and it kind of happened quickly once they offered him, and it was on from there. But I think that position will kind of evolve, but keep an eye on those 2 guys.
Well, it's funny, Alex. Like with Duckworth, they got to get him on campus. Bottom line, nothing else. They got to get him on campus again. Smeagol, we'll see what happens, but if there is one position that you can go in the transfer portal and get, it seems to be quarterback right now. A lot of kids don't want to wait. If they're second or third string and you already have a first string quarterback, you can entice them to come and compete in a murky situation. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, quarterback, I wouldn't be surprised to take a transfer.
look at what they did this past season. I mean, they got Cutter Woods as well, but were able to get Aaron Nolan, who was a pretty highly sought after quarterback transfer. So I mean, that it's always that the portal is always there just in case that something like that does happen.
Yeah. So running back, I know that the Carson kid is someone they've had circled. A lot of competition there, but he's coming for a visit.
Yeah, he'll be in June 20th, which was pretty big that they were able to go ahead and get that scheduled. He's probably I would say he's the top guy they're going after that position right now, and he's really good coming out of Langston Hughes, which I think is also, if I'm right, is also the same high school as Aaron Nolan came out of. So, but as you mentioned, there's a lot of competition there. Georgia, Ohio State. I mean, those are probably the two right there to watch with him. But South Carolina's been after him for a while and really made him a priority. So, we'll see kind of what the visits look like. Get into that official visit schedule, but I think he's kind of the top target right now. And, Jalen McGill is one that's kind of interesting too, coming in Spartanburg. Was once committed to Rutgers, but didn't take long for that. It wasn't long after that he decommitted. And, we'll see right now, but I think Carson Baker's the one to kind of keep an eye on. And that's another position where it kind of evolves too, that some guys can pop up late.
Absolutely. And I think running back, that's another position that I think you can find in the transfer portal. I mean, you can find kids that if you need blocking, you can find blocking. You need explosion, you can find explosion. And all these kids nowadays they don't want the wear and tear on their bodies. Like running backs just understand their market value in the NFL if they're lucky enough to get that far. So, Alex, wide receiver, I'll go ahead and throw this out there. I don't know how many guys they're going to take. I would think they want to take at least 2 or 3. At least 2. I could see 3 or 4, but I think that's a stretch after last year in the haul that they had, unless there's some attrition. But I think Gordon Sellers, the kid that you and I saw over the summer, big, tall, long, lanky-ish, athletic kid. Looks like Clemson might be in the lead for him. And then a couple of other 3- and 4-star wide receivers that the Gamecocks are after. But if you want to start with Sellers or you want to go past him and fill everybody else in, that's fine too.
Yeah, the two that I'm really watching with South Carolina is obviously Gordon Sellers. He's announcing on April 18th, and he, I think it's coming down to South Carolina and Clemson right now. And he was he was at Clemson spring game, and I think he's coming back this Saturday to South Carolina. So South Carolina may kind of have like a last shot type of thing to see if they can, persuade him to come to South Carolina. So I think that's one name to keep an eye on. Another one's Ryan Mosley out of Carrollton. He's one that kind of feels maybe a Georgia South Carolina battle for him, and he's a guy who's a top 200 player in the country. He is 6'4", 206. And it's kind of the wide receiver size that they're looking for. And same with Gordon Sellers too. Like they kind of, I think they, once a certain height they're looking for is that 6'2" and above in this class, just because they had a few guys in this past class that were some of those like kind of maybe shorter, speedy guys. So I think now you can kind of look for those perimeter guys like a Gordon Sellers or a Ryan Mosley. But Ryan Mosley, that one's going to be another battle with Georgia, really. And I think Nebraska and Texas A&M are also kind of in there, but we'll see. And those official visits with him will be big, and we'll kind of see where this room progresses as well.
Yeah, I think getting Sellers back in this upcoming weekend is really big because if he was locked in on Clemson, doesn't have to take the visit. It's not a long drive. I do know that he has some South Carolina in his ear. I don't know how predominant that voice will end up being overall, but he's a kid that I liked in the summer, and maybe it's all right. Both teams are even. Here's what we want. Can we get it somewhere? Can we get it here? And maybe it's that last pitch at the table. But tight end, Alex, I think that there was a recent offer maybe yesterday, 26 kid.
Yeah, Tilden Riley out of Orangeburg, 6'5", 211, goes to Orangeburg Prep. He's one that's kind of, maybe kind of emerged late here, and lately he's a guy who's really starting to see his offer list grow. He's got Virginia Tech, West Virginia, Vanderbilt. He's got official visits to each of those schools, including Florida Atlantic, and South Carolina offered last night. And I think he's pretty fun to watch on film. He's a guy when you see they kind of just give him the ball and let him go, and he kind of does the rest of the work. But he's also a 3-sport star at Orangeburg Prep. He's already over 1,000 points as a junior in basketball. He got it in his junior season. Really talented on the baseball field as well, and he's really intriguing. I think could be an option to. I mean, obviously they really like him and offered him last night, and they maybe we're going to look for 2 in that room right now. You got Mike Tyler coming in this 2025 class. He'll arrive in the summer, and then they got 1 committed in Jamel House, who's I think he got a really high ceiling as well out of Newberry, and he's been committed since middle of the football season last year, so things are still looking good there. But I think just kind of when you look at the room and the numbers there, maybe you try to obviously they're going to try to add more, and I think the ideal number. And right now, Tilden Riley looks like the guy that could be really going after.
Yeah, then you move on to offensive line. Gamecocks have recruited very, very well there lately. Seems to be like this is a position group. I don't want to go like offensive tackle, offensive guard, center necessarily, but offensive line seems to be a position group that teams around the country are trying to zero in on and get these guys committed. I feel like there's a lot of pressure on kids to go ahead and commit right now. But what are you seeing right now, Alex, on that side, on that line of the side of the ball? I don't know what I'm trying to say there.
Yeah, you got two already committed in Zion Giles, who's a 4-star guy, and Anthony Baxter out of South Point. You got two South Point guys right now with him and Jazavian Kearns. But those two are committed right now. And obviously the top target right now is Darius Gray, who's a 5-star offensive lineman out of St. Christopher's School in Richmond. And South Carolina's been in a pretty good spot with him for a while. And I think now it's just kind of fending off a lot of schools just because, he being a 5-star offensive lineman, a lot of schools are going to come after him. But he was down pretty recently, I think, and I think it was a pretty big visit for him. And we'll see with the official visit schedule where things go there as well. But I kind of like where South Carolina is with him right now. And another guy to keep an eye on, Desmond Green as well, out of Timberland. Saw him this weekend at the Charlotte Under Armour camp, and he's a guy who I can see rise the rankings pretty quickly just because of I thought he had a really good showing. And with him, Georgia is really one to watch. I think it could end up being a South Carolina Georgia battle, and I think the key is just to get him into those official visits and see what you can do there. But a couple of other guys, in-state guys, Trey Aiken, South Carolina's offered, and he's got a few schools after him as well. And he was another one I thought looked pretty good this weekend in Charlotte at the camp. So, they continue to recruit that position, and they've recruited really well there. And I think just continue to stack guys. But Darius Gray is the one that's I think could end up being. Well, he is right now ranked one as the top offensive lineman in the country, but he can just kind of be that foundation for the offensive line class and really class as a whole.
Yeah, and Alex, I think that we went across the offensive side of the ball. I think that's the perfect place to end tonight. And next week we'll talk more about the defensive side of the ball. And we'll be talking a lot. We got another scrimmage coming up this weekend, and some basketball portal stuff will be coming to fruition. But Alex is going to be here for the recruiting stuff, and he's always on the bigspur.com. So make sure that you're reading all the information there, and we'll make sure to bring everything to you that we can. But I can't wait till next week, Alex. We'll be right back. We'll probably go Wednesday next week. We'll talk and make sure that works, but it would be Tuesday or Wednesday. But we'll plan for Wednesday right now. But a lot of exciting things happening. Make sure you're checking out Inside the Gamecocks, the morning show, and Inside the Gamecocks, the show. You guys have 27 hours of Gamecock content a week coming to you, and we love doing it. So we appreciate all of y'all being here with us tonight. We appreciate that you give us your time, which is the most valuable thing you have. If you ever have any questions, please reach out to us. Our Twitter handles are up there right now. We're both on the Big Spur. You can send us private messages. You can give us a shout on the board, whatever. You can come to the YouTube chat, but we appreciate you so much. Alex, any parting thoughts before we get out of here tonight?
I think we kind of hit on it all. Is women's basketball season came to an end, but then they hit the ground running, the transfer portal, and we'll see men's side does. I think we mentioned maybe some news. Some info starts to come out later this week on guys, see who they're targeting. But baseball seems to be in a pretty good spot right now.
Yeah,
some momentum to get in College Station.
Absolutely. And the Gamecocks, before we get out of here, they're up 12-2 right now. They got runners on the corners with 2 outs. So right now, we'll see if the Gamecocks can pile on some insurance runs, but they look to be about 3 outs away from closing this game out, and everyone can go to sleep early tonight. Well, Alex doesn't. He never sleeps.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Well, again, we appreciate all y'all, and we'll talk to you soon. See you later.